Morning, everybody. Welcome to Real Talks with Keith Smith. As you can tell, Jerry's not sitting in his seat today. He is off enjoying his family on a well-deserved vacation. We'll find out about how that went next weekend when he comes back. But we got three rock stars in front of me, and then Chris. But we got Chris Fairchild to my right, was chair of the Fluvanna County Board of Supervisors. To his right is Jesse Rutherford. You're not chairman. What do you?
No, I'm just a
board of
supervisor.
Board
it's
of
a
supervisor.
wonderful role to have.
What district?
East District, Livingston, Scotland.
Represent.
We'll talk about why that's so lovely versus being
That's right.
chairperson
Relative to Fluvanna.
of Nelson County.
Oh, sorry, I thought we were talking about Fluvanna.
And the Neil Williamson sitting across from me, filling in for Jerry Slott. So he's got full autonomy to make whatever movie reference he wishes to make, or song reference on it. And they're passing notes. No passing notes, guys, on that. So, first of all, gentlemen, how's everybody feeling?
It's great day.
Thriving. Just having way too much fun.
Way too much fun.
Way too much fun already.
Way too much fun. So, I got a couple of pre-canned questions, and we'll just kind of see where the conversation goes, and then we'll kind of just take it from there. So, obviously, I'm a housing guy, so we're going to kind of talk about growth in housing. Everybody kind of knew that coming in, but
Shocked.
what I really want to talk a little bit about is how everybody's approaching it a little bit differently from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and just have a conversation and open it up as if we were sitting at a coffee shop, or in our case, a bar. So I'm just going to do a round table. Smart growth. What does that look like to you, Chris?
Controlled.
Control.
Yeah.
Can you expand upon? Expand?
Well, yes, sure.
Expand.
I mean, growth is coming. I think it's. Whenever I hear that somebody, they say, "Well, you're against growth," well, that would just be that's a nonsensical conversation, in my opinion. Growth is inevitable, and it's just a matter of managing it to reflect the community you want to be, and not allowing outside sources to decide that for you.
So one of the reasons I was kind of excited about today, other than I enjoy everybody's company, is we got two rural counties, right?
Yeah.
On it. So, Jesse, from your perspective,
I mean, it's funny when you talk about growth, that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I often am very critical of the word rural, because not one person means the same thing. It depends on what life they've lived. For example, the out-of-towner from, let's just say New York or whatever. Not throw Keith out there.
Right under the bus.
Right under the bus. Boop, boop.
somebody needs to back it up.
When it comes back, I'm sure Chris will go next.
I'll take care of
that. Have on the backing up. But, they'll often come in here and they'll say, we want to preserve rural character. And that, from the aesthetic of that sentence, sounds phenomenal. Everybody's like, yes, preserve rural character. Which often means different things to different people. To the logging company, that's preserving their ability to live on the farm, continue to operate their farm operations and logging. Whereas some people might say, well, do you really need to cut trees down anymore? Do you really need to do some of those activities you're used to? Biosolids is always a controversial one. So when I think of smart growth, I often like referencing the history of areas and what they once were. So in Schuyler, is a great example, was once a thriving community with thousands of jobs. It had a hospital, car dealerships, all the things a person needed in the 1900s.
A lot of people don't know that, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know the hospital part.
Yeah, it had a hospital and everything.
Yonna used to ran the U.S. and Canadian operations for
Tuliviki, right?
Tuliviki,
Oh,
yeah.
Tuliviki, yeah.
When we first got here, and it was really cool to walk through that buildings, and the buildings, just see the history of it. It was more populous than Charlottesville at one point in time.
And during the Depression, it was probably one of the more affluent parts of our region, because it was untouched in terms of economics. They just needed more jobs. They needed more bodies to work the jobs. So other than folks going off to war and all that, if you were close to the quarries, then you kind of always had a job. So when I think of smart growth, it comes down to infrastructure conversations, specifically water and sewer. You can't really, even a private developer trying to do private options, you can't even really have growth when you don't have much options for infrastructure. So Nelson County is a hard place to develop. We've talked about this 100 times. Scott.
I'm changing my thinking on that, but I'll jump into that.
Okay,
a
all right.
little bit later.
Show me some flat land. But between the
They
topography.
have those rollers that kind of level the whole thing.
Yeah,
It's called bulldozers.
Bulldozers.
Yeah.
We've seen some of that in Albemarle. We're not quite that ready,
Yeah.
But all I'm saying is smart growth looks like where's your infrastructure, where's your main corridors. Nelson County has the 29 corridor going right through it, and in that has the ability in some places, especially the town of Livingston, to be able to facilitate bringing back some of those economic activities that once used to exist there. Currently, there's a lot of niche things, but in order to kind of attract something that brings more of an anchor to provide local jobs, you got to look at the infrastructure piece. So,
Jump back in. Neil, jump in, buddy. What do you
Smart growth is a stupid oxymoron.
I like this. It's gonna
How do
Okay,
you possibly,
okay.
it goes right up there with,
Smith, never use that word again. Got it.
Smart
it
growth
goes-
oxymoron.
it goes right up there with Army intelligence. It was
Oh,
invented many moons ago, and then it fell out of favor. It went from smart growth to traditional neighborhood design to new urbanism. And with each moniker change, the consultants got another year of traveling the country speaking about this new moniker and how it was so different than the last moniker, which was just talking about smart stuff. Now, I also think that it sets you in a bad place. Well, if you're opposed to smart growth, what are you for? Dumb growth?
Right.
I mean, it's a beautiful rhetorical statement. Now, I think that Jesse's comments about change are important. It's not just World War II era. Those with even short memories can remember in the 90s, Disney DVDs were being pressed in Ruckersville at Nimbus. Guess what? It's not there anymore. Why? Well, the world changed and labor changed and change happens.
Yeah.
And
What is it? Death and taxes are the two things, and change is the third one.
Yeah.
Yep, it is the one thing you can count on. And so I think that as we look at how we grow, I think expectations are important. If you're from Nelson County, you think 2 traffic lights is a jam. If you're from Arlington, you think 2 traffic lights, that's not even getting to the coffee shop.
Yeah.
So it's all relative.
Yep.
And I think that each locality has to utilize their elected officials to speak to their representatives, their constituents, and voice what they want to have happen. And the idea of smart growth, of interconnectivity and efficient delivery of government services is critically important. But when it's taken to the nth degree, you end up having a restriction on development, and you maybe have, let's say, pull a number out of that, 95% of your land mass unavailable for development.
Anything.
That seems
That would be
ridiculous.
What county?
Moore County?
And the 5% that's left over isn't really buildable anyway.
And it's not 5%.
Yeah. We'll go into that. So I'm going to ask you one more question and kind of go around. So Neil, you're a policy expert, right? You sit in front of all the meetings. You know all the
Experts in
play-
overstatement.
Yeah. I'm trying to be kind, and my youngest daughter's teaching me, Yvonne, Daddy, use kind words. So I'm trying to use kind words.
It's not in the Yankee know-how. You've got to learn
Huh?
it. It's not in the Yankee know-how. You've got to learn it. Yeah.
It's a true thing, though. That's true. So right now, what one land use, a thing or decision was made, let's say in the last 12 months or more, however you want to do it, that actually made sense, was a good thing? Then, of course, on the opposite side, what one land use that was about as dumb as a box of rocks?
I actually think that, I've been vocal about my opposition to the new zoning ordinance in Charlottesville. The overarching themes in there are net positive for a city that is 10 square miles. I would say the new zoning ordinance would not fit with the rural localities, but it is clearly enunciating what the political will of the city of Charlottesville is. That being said, the corollary, June 30, the Judge Worrell, threw it out and said it's null and void.
Why?
Thinking, because of a technicality, a hired lawyer didn't file a report on time.
So a lawyer
it was-
that the county hired.
The city.
The city.
city hired.
The city
And-
hired.
And I would push that the city should hire outside counsel for litigation.
agreed.
But it needs to be watched. And I actually think the city made an error years ago deciding to do a comprehensive zoning ordinance change. Most localities choose to amend their zoning ordinance in pieces. If it goes to court, the amendment gets
Right.
thrown out, not the
I
entire
see.
zoning code.
That makes sense.
That's
Well,
a little
we're
bit.
at a point right now that nothing is happening.
That's a little bit of Monday morning quarterbacking, but the bottom line is, right now, we have a huge problem because prior to enacting the zoning ordinance, they repealed the prior zoning ordinance, and in the opinion of the city manager, and by relation, the city attorney, they don't believe they have a zoning ordinance, and so rather than doing anything, they're doing nothing. Well, as someone who is a believer in free enterprise, when government does nothing, usually we're happy. We're not in this case.
Well, I'm going to pick, though we're talking about Fluvanna and Nelson and the rural counties, you bring up something that I would have in some of my notes here, and throw out to you two guys to jump in whenever you want. Do you think land use and housing is more regional or specific to individual counties? In other words, does what Neil is talking about in the city of Charlottesville impact Nelson and or Fluvanna, and vice versa?
To me, it's a two-sided answer. Yes, what you do impacts your neighbor. Decisions are on the county level, for the most part. Meaning, we're going to decide. I always say, when I go down my driveway, it's up to me to decide down my driveway what's good for me and my family, and everything else comes after. I'm elected to look after the rights and future of Fluvanna County, and that's where my passion is. I love the region. I'm a neighbor, but it all starts there. Certainly, what we do can affect the rest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we just look at the economics of it, right? You know, if UVA has how many employees? 10, 20, I don't even know how many thousands they got.
Yeah.
And
Enough.
if the moment they start laying off is actually a really cyclical thing to Nelson County, because we have a lot of people who work there in a myriad of different roles. Housing is not much different of a conversation. If Charlottesville, Albemarle cannot answer their housing problems, it becomes a Nelson County problem, because at any point you're in that MSA of Charlottesville. There's a reason why MSA exists. It's the service
Metropolitan Statistical Area.
statistical area.
Thank
Because
you,
these
Will.
people are, thank you, because these people are willing to live within typically that region to work jobs in that region, right? So if you're a native of Fluvanna, Louisa, and you see a random $300,000 house pop up in Nelson, you're like, same commute distance to Charlottesville, I'm willing to take that change. So the failure of the region to try to answer some of those housing issues does impact our localities big time.
So, hey, Judah, I don't have my slide numbers with me, so I don't not remember the actual slide numbers. Oh, look at that. Thank you. Appreciate that. Do me a favor, pull up slide 1, if you don't mind, please. So thank you, Neil. So slide 1, you know, what I did is I did an analysis for the first 6 months, how we're looking at 2024 versus 2025. And we did it last quarter in the whole car footprint. And actually, you know, the pace of homes closing was actually substantially down in the first quarter. But if you take a look at the slide, we actually picked up. We're only about 8 homes short versus year over year, which has actually surprised me. I didn't expect to see that. But we're up roughly 4% in, excuse me, I forgot to shut my hearing aids off, we're up roughly around 4% in the median sales price. But I want to talk specifically about our county. And I think that is, Judah, hang on a second, please. I think that is slide number 3. We can get back to Neil if he wants to, thank you.
Excuse me.
Dude, we were the rock stars. 24 versus 25. Number of sales went up 20.6%. We went from 165 to 199. So we jumped 20% in the volume of sales. The median sales price went from 350 to 385. That's a jump of 385. And I wondered why. And it's all the new construction at Colonial Circle. There's 71 units. So in Fluvanna, we're going to peak and stop. right? Green, Neil's home county has actually been really rocking and rolling, and it's going to continue to grow, and we talk about that. But what's important about this is the price point, right? So if you take a look at, and again, I'm bouncing around a little bit, but if you take a look at Charlottesville, hang on one second, I got that number here somewhere on my thing, or somebody can shout out if they can find it. Thank you. I got to find it on my end. I don't know where number 2 is.
It's top of page 2.
Thank you. Look at that, page 2. It actually went down. It went from 216 to 208, dropped in 4% in sales, and the sale price went from 521 to 508. There's really no new construction to speak of. So I think what's happening is what's impacting Charlottesville is impacting you and I, right, in our county. So the point, to your point, is they're coming, and what I'm trying to get to this regional question, and I know you're smart enough to keep track on what's going on, but we've got all this pressure going on in Fluvanna, and what in your opinion is the next best step? Does that make sense? Did I go a long way around it?
I think so, but next best step is not do again what we did with Colonial Circle, for one. And it's how you define Rockstar. If you're moving properties,
I'm talking about from a sales perspective.
Yeah. While, of course, that subdivision substantially, especially because of the 124 apartments that people have to...
Which they're about 80% built, occupied.
Yeah, and it has to average something like the 60% of the area median income.
Cannot exceed 60%.
That's going to raise the cost of living for everybody in Fluvanna, and the mass of those people won't be coming from Fluvanna. So, in my opinion, part of that answer is not to do what we've already done. I didn't vote for it. This development was approved before I was on the board, and then the subsidies from the county on the real estate tax on the apartments were not something that I voted against.
You really want to jump in on this?
Well, it is in differing counties and localities, the issue of affordable housing and what affordable housing looks like is different. And when I think of affordable housing in the outlying counties, oftentimes I'm thinking of established housing stock that is NOAA, naturally occurring affordable housing. My son lives in NOAA right now. It was his wife's grandmother's brick rancher on an acre and a half. Well, you know what? It's affordable, and I used to say, what's a starter home? It's when you can vacuum the whole house and don't have to unplug the vacuum. That's a starter home. And quite honestly, we're not building starter homes anymore.
No, you can't.
You can't. You can't afford to because of the cost of the dirt.
Yeah.
So the ideas that are being pursued about retaining naturally occurring affordable housing, especially in the outlying counties, make a lot of sense. That being said, they're also in the outlying counties, as well as Albemarle and Charlottesville, there is a groundswell of support for affordable housing. The question then becomes who pays for it. And if the community wants something, the entire community should pay. And it shouldn't be put on the new home buyer in the terms of a voluntary proffer. Where you are mandated.
At least I'll push back. At least, and this is the world I know well, right? I know extortion. I mean, development well.
Talk about New York again?
Yeah. There we go. I was waiting for this to happen. At least with the old proffer system, at least everybody knew the rules. Even if they weren't written, they were unwritten rules to do it. With this new proffer policy, particularly when you talk to elected officials, nobody really knows the rules, right? I'd rather deal with somebody saying, this is what I need to get my vote, so at least I can either make a decision, I can do this from a business side, or say, you know what, I can't, and I walk away.
Well, how many Virginians does it take to unscrew a light bulb? 10. 1 to do the unscrewing, and 9 to remember how great the old light bulb was.
Dun-dun-dun.
Yeah. I'm gonna chime into this a little bit because, when we talk about what does it mean to the community when growth doesn't happen? I mean, Nelson County, statistically speaking, we are every 10 years, our median age is going up 10 years.
And you're losing.
And we're losing kids.
Yeah, big time.
And, you know, so I certainly I can understand, you know, as we think about services for a constituent, what that means in the dollars and cents and how that translates. I think one of the more damaging things is losing children in communities. Because you don't just lose that, you're losing this trademark of the history of Nelson County, of people who are able to carry on the legacies of their families with those family farms, forces those family farms to get sold to either very affluent individuals. Basically, that's the only ones who are buying large properties in Nelson. Developers are not eyeballing Nelson County. It's affluent individuals.
I'm pushing. You be careful. I think you're
I haven't
going.
met 'em.
I think you're going. No, I
Yeah.
think you're going to see growth happen. Don't write this down.
I'm
But
not.
growth's going to happen between Livingston and Lynchburg. Right? Is it Lynchburg? Yeah, it's Lynchburg. Right.
I don't know how.
Well,
Amherst has a lot.
Yeah, it's getting looked at. Let's put it that way.
It might be getting looked at, but one of the things about us being Livingston is the dead middle between Livingston and Charlottesville. We do have a serious culture of people who, wife works at UVA, husband works at some blue-collared entity that's manufacturing in Lynchburg. So we get a little bit of that, but if they can afford it, they rather pay $150,000 less per house and live in Amherst.
So you know what your median sales price is right now?
It's like 400 and
432.5.
That's
Remember when
crazy.
I gave the presentation to
Yeah.
your board and it was 401?
401.
And that was a few years ago,
Right.
and your board members didn't believe me? Well, we
Yeah.
just went in a couple of few
432.
years from 401 to 432.
Yeah.
The sale volume's down a
Right,
little bit. But
right.
Can I mention something?
Sure.
And I'd be interested, be it here or off microphone, to discuss proffers and learn more from your perspective. I've always said, well, one, I'm not so sure every time, well, I am sure often it's not the will of the community when, or the mass of the people when some developments are being proposed and people are trying to get them passed. I just watched last week, don't know if y'all have ever seen the movie There Will Be Blood. It is really a great movie. And really the gist of it is this oil guy that becomes a tycoon is very manipulative and very much all about forging forward and getting what he wants the way he wants to get it. And in part of it, when he really establishes this little area where he just found all the oil, he brings all the people together. He has a community meeting, a town hall. He sits and tells them about all the wonderful things this is going to do for them. And it's going to bring them roads and schools, and they're going to take care. Yes, we sure will send a lot of that money to church. And I couldn't help but hear some developers, reflect on some developers that we've talked to. And you know, hey, if it's a 5-member board, all you got to have is 3 of 28,000 people to agree with it. And yes, right.
Max said it.
Yeah. And you know, we just end of this past year.
I think anyway, I'll leave it.
we got
I'll
rid
shut
of.
up. That was a rebuttal, by the way.
We got rid of. Keith, you threw me off.
Sorry about that, buddy. I should not do that to somebody with my fellow AD.
Yeah.
You had a certain amount of people, developers
When you
coming
can
in.
buy right
By right,
subdivisions.
but it's difficult in your county now. Our county now, it's only 5, so there's not much of a by right opportunity, right? You've
5
got
what?
Only you can do
Districts?
5 divisions, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So, all we got rid of, it didn't say you can't develop. It
No,
just said
you have to rezone. So
Yeah, it just said
So with
you gotta
all
go
due
through the
respect, sir,
process.
that's not a by right. That's a rezoning, which is a whole
yeah.
different animal.
That's what I said. Yeah.
So I heard
we
by
got
right.
rid of by right. So you don't have that by right option
Well, no, you
anymore.
didn't. You have by right. It's only 5.
Yeah, but okay.
The
We got
idea-
rid of
yeah,
that.
the
You
idea.
can't take 25% of 100 acres.
You meaning the
and-
cluster
and-
development?
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
got it.
So we want the people to have that say. Until that, then the developer had the ability to say that without us participating.
But what
and
about
if
the-
and by the way, since it's by right, we couldn't have proffers. And a developer can come in, say they want to do this thing, and let's say it's not by right, and they get approval to build 300 and some homes at Nahor, and then they move on, and the rest of us are left to pay for the schools, the fire trucks, and so on.
And I get all that, and then I'm going to just push back a little bit. So what about the opposite side, right? So what about the side where Greene County, for instance, I know this personally, there was a project that came up that would have been a wonderful, in my opinion, infrastructure impact on the county. There was a half a dozen people that opposed it, and it got shot down. Well, ultimately, it's going by right, and they're going to get everything that they don't want. And oh, by the way, they won't get water, they won't get sewer paid for, and so forth and so on. So how do you reconcile at the opposite when there is a smaller number of people opposing the development, right, and using them as the litmus test for the full county?
Well, I'd say, so somebody actually, well, it's in your notes about today's conversations about if you get a small minority that shows up.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah.
Well, the average board member isn't looking at those 6 or 10 people and going, well, the people have spoken. The average board member got elected because they know their constituents, and they know their county, they know their district, and they're having phone conversations, they're being, people are stopping them at the food line.
That's why I wanted you to say what you said, because a lot of people don't know. All they see is the half a dozen people.
I think almost every board member, if not every board member, would tell you that there is zero reality to the 6 people that showed up. God bless them. Great to come out, and they can say things that have a voice that's stronger than mine to my fellow board members sometimes. I'm just saying decisions weren't made just because those 6 people showed up.
Yeah. So when it comes to housing, just generally, and I look at it from the local sphere, and I like to look at housing and freedom kind of in this same thing, because, when our founding fathers wrote some stuff down, they said life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
What John Locke wrote?
Right. What did he?
What John Locke wrote, life, liberty, and property.
And property.
Jefferson changed it to pursuit of happiness.
And, thank you, I forgot about that. But the premise of that is a person can truly live that liberty of the American thing when they actually have full control of this thing where they get to raise a family, do these things, and so long as the injuries of what they do not exit their property bounds. And when I look at a native Nelsonian who's sitting there trying to fulfill that story that his family once was able to do in Nelson County for 200 years, right? And that's, my family history on my mama's side goes back hundreds of years to Nelson County, and every year that goes by, I got less and less relatives being able to participate in the same stories that we all did. And by virtue of that, Nelson County produced the sliding scale. Are you familiar with the sliding scale model for zoning? So, you can have 100 acres, but you can do 12, and the first 2 got to be a couple acres, then it goes to 5, then it goes to 10, then at some point you're getting in there, and you're like, well, by golly, that lot, if you had 5 kids, 2 of them are getting 2 acres, and I need to sell this 5 acres over here. All that to say is, to truly live the story of your community, that native demographics inability to be able to participate on that subdivision piece, and we have some family subdivision rights that do exist. Does Fluvanna have that?
Oh yeah, Fluvanna has a awesome family
Is it
subdivision.
like 1 acre lot minimums?
I believe it's 2.
Yeah.
You got to have a 30-foot easement that touches a public right-of-way, but it's very very friendly towards family subdivision.
And that's a good thing, but even then, that required a family that had generational property, which isn't always.
I've got clients who are buying property in our county to literally do that very thing.
To do that generational thing. But if you were that working class individual who lives in some area and your mom bought the company town or the company house, and then you want to live, you see a parcel of land that comes at 5 acres, and the guy's like, I'd be willing to subdivide it to you, but I can't because of minimums or whatever that may be. Next thing, they're not infiltrating that. My overall premise is saying that, it's that Scottish saying, a man's house is his castle, his land, his kingdom. Housing to me is an inerrant thing that I think everyone should be able to have access to ownership, not necessarily subsidized, but utilizing the free market mechanisms that do exist to do those things. And with that, we won't have scarce land and housing situations like in Nelson, where the median price is $400,000. The working class man isn't participating in the housing market.
Can I just add 2 things, not to jump ahead of everybody? One, I am absolutely property rights.
With a lot of conditions. While
I've also learned that what you do affects me. And so we had a guy who wanted to put a solar, lifelong, he's 3rd generation Fluvanna, wanted to turn about 200 acres into solar, and he's saying, property rights, it's my property, I ought to be able to do what I want. And this is out in Bremo, very rural area of the county. I said, so that 200 acres over there, somebody wants to build 600 apartments on that 200 acres. You okay with that? Because
Nope.
that's their right, they own it.
Nope.
Right, of course not. So there's a solar lobbyist that going around telling all about property rights. Well, what that's going to turn is, okay, then.
Yeah, but
do
Chris,
the same
that's
with the
got-
park.
You can't put solar and housing. Are you familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
The right to do what you just mentioned, the IRS or whatever,
Let's-
the right to do with what
Yeah.
you want to do on your
Let's
property.
let Neil jump in because I see that big
Yeah,
grin.
sir.
Well, the reality that I see is that, and I'll relate it to a story. I lived in a house for 24 years, loved it. The area behind me was wooded. Somebody bought that area, put up a big old house. Well, that was fine. Then they put up a great big auto repair metal building that every morning my wife opened the bedroom shade and that's what she saw. Well, needless to say, we moved. That was my property right. That gentleman had every right. He was not in an HOA or any other covenants. But the concern that I have when you hinder solar or housing or anything else, rather than saying no, say yes and. So yes, solar and buffers, significant buffers that would prevent, and yes, and bonds that would guarantee that when that gets retired, it gets taken care of.
Turns back into a field. again.
Whatever
There's a
is
lot of
necessary.
issues on that end of it coming up, but.
There are a
There's
lot of
a lot
issues
at the state
I think-
level.
But I think that the solar
Well,
piece
maybe
also, people are a little, they're math challenged with how much solar is going to be the final solutions
Sure.
for the energy needs.
Absolutely.
But
It's just a quick
in a
easy
non-political way, I do think that the all of the above solution is not a bad idea. That being said, if there is a community that has a comprehensive plan, which by the way every community has to have, and those 600 apartments are part of that comprehensive plan, you bet your bippy I think they should be approved. Because that plan is what you guys said you wanted to do. The issue that Mr. Smith raised with regard to Greene County, that particular parcel had been dedicated to residential since the 1970s in the comprehensive plan, but not the zoning. One of the Free Enterprise Forum's biggest heartaches is you have a comprehensive plan that says A, but then you wait to get your proffers and everything else to rezone it to do what you said you wanted to do, and it's a non sequitur.
And part of the political reality to that is two boards prior to one because it's every 5 years?
5 years.
Every 5 years. So now, that may have, that cycled out that this current board, to Chris's point, based on his conversations with his constituents, does not match that. Now, that's when Chris and his board need to now change the comprehensive plan to match whatever the community's reality is at that given point. And that's generally, that's generally the struggle with the comp plan and the zoning is they never parallel one another on that. But
So it's a
go ahead.
great point, thank you for that. And second,
Well, let me write that down. Chris,
yeah.
Chris.
No to smart growth.
Shoot, that's
Chris
on mine.
compliment.
So
Yeah.
he didn't say it was smart, but I got to write that
Didn't say
down.
you're
It's written
pretty, that's
down.
for sure, but,
By the way, just before, can you hold on to that train of thought?
yeah.
Okay. So do you know what the AMI is for two persons and 60% in our county is?
I
The
don't.
area minimum? It's $60,420. So a two-person household, so I'm going back to that apartment complex. So that's a lot of money. So you cannot exceed $60,420. That's a big number.
And that's about half the AMI of the MSA.
That's half of the AMI.
That's a lot, annual median income.
So
of the
what's
metropolitan
important about that
area.
project, it doesn't go by what the area median income for Fluvanna County is, it goes by what the MSA is. So that, and the rents on those things are not as low as everybody thinks they are.
Right.
But go ahead, I'm sorry.
The only other thing I was going to say, so the conversation we've had about our comprehensive plan is, so one board member will say, we said around Lake Monticello, it's a planning area that we're going to have it, and it's in our comprehensive plan, and so on. Well, okay, we're running into aqua concerns, very notable concerns from the people in that
100%.
area. Well, that wasn't such a subject 5 years ago when the comprehensive plan, now more than 5 years ago, COVID has pushed it back some. some of the pressures that you experience during that growth, then people, before you get to your new comp plan, will go, "Whoa, wait a minute, that's not feeling good." But the main one I was going to mention was, I think it's 17 times that in our comprehensive plan, it says maintain our rural character. So an argument back against the board member who's saying, wait, we said we're going to do it, is, but it also says 17 times maintain our rural character.
Because
now, we can argue and debate of what that means, but that's what the citizens do when they elect somebody. They've expressed their opinion in that.
How does
and those
Fluvanna
people
define rural character?
Right.
For the real
That's
estate
how you
agent,
can argue and decide what that means.
for the real estate agents that may be listening, and I know you do general real estate, Jesse, it's like the new home inspection contingency addendum. The state created this vague language that it used to be, it was clearly you could not terminate the contract unless it was a material defect. Now it's just whatever you interpret it is to do that. So the problem is the way the base document is written, that the definition of rural character was not clearly defined, and it was kind of baked into the document, because I was part of it. It was baked into the document to make it vague to start with, to have this argument. Look, the reality of it is, our personal county, that I have not lived there as long as you have, is the growth is coming, the prices are going up, right? My taxes are going up. We are doing a great job on trying to change that ratio of commercial versus residential.
Yeah.
If we ever get to 10% in my lifetime, that'll be freaking huge.
I'll just say, because it's so much of it's closed session, there's a lot of good stuff really.
You're
in the
still
mix.
not going to get to 30%.
I'll bet you.
What you want to bet?
There's some things that are going to shock your numbers. I'll bet you.
What are we going to bet?
That's
Chicken dinner?
Chicken dinner? No, we don't do that. It's okay.
bottle of bourbon.
I respect you too much to push back on closed
to
sessions.
what number are you shooting for?
So I'll let my dear friend Neil jump in what the panacea is what the perfect balance should be.
Well, I will say, never bet against an elected official who's coming out of closed session.
The only reason I'm betting is I'm looking across to the bar and we need some more bourbon. So instead of me buying it, I'm paying for it one way or
Most
the other.
most locality nerds would say, if you have a 30% commercial contribution to your entire tax base, that is a good balance for 70% being property taxes. That being said, if you look back to, we do a report for the Chamber of Commerce called the Retail Report, and if you look back to the years that Louisa and Greene County opened up their the Walmart and Lowe's centers, Greene County, I'm familiar with the numbers, they were having 1 cent of every 5 cents collected of sales tax goes back to the locality. Right. They were receiving $1 million a year in sales tax prior to the Lowe's and Walmart, Super Walmart opening up. I think it's a Super Walmart. At any rate, now they receive $3 million a year. That's a big difference for most localities, a $2 million swing in revenue.
Oh, yeah. That's huge.
And the reason for that is retail follows rooftops.
Sure.
And vice versa, by the way.
And vice versa. Yeah. But the reality is that whenever you see this, many folks trumpet, growth doesn't pay for itself. Well, that is perhaps true if you look at the property tax revenue generated by development. That is not true if you consider the one step further. Those people eat, they buy stuff, they build stuff, and they are active parts of your community. The Free Enterprise Forum believes that people are the greatest asset any community has. And Jesse's comment about children, and we consider children people too, because I think that is really the heartbeat of the community. And so having more people isn't necessarily a bad thing. That being said, how you accommodate that growth is the challenge before these boards of supervisors and city councils.
So can I ask you, so understanding what you're saying about it's not all about just the real estate tax to decide if it's a net positive. So I say to people, look at Richmond, Hampton Roads, and Fairfax. They got a lot of jobs, a lot of people. how's the cost of living going for them? And so if more means lower cost, where is that? And you know this stuff. I don't mean it sarcastically, but what I say to people often is, where is that oasis that's a monstrosity of gobs and gobs of growth and thousands and millions of people, that their quality of life and their cost of living is better than
It's the
Fluvanna's.
same place that the winning lottery ticket numbers are held.
Yeah.
Right?
The-
It doesn't exist.
However, policies that were put in place that restricted development in smaller portions of localities hindered development. And that hindrance of development creates leapfrog development. There was a time that I lived in Northern Virginia back in the 80s, and you could see on Route 7, back long before there were all these other ways to get in, you would see West Virginia license plates coming in to service Fairfax County, Arlington, and D.C.
Yeah.
Those were the service workers.
And we're running into that in construction today with the lack of construction workers in the area. I mean, I can name a lot of outfits that come out of Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and on the western side, I know a lot of guys who are rolling in from West Virginia to work in like Winchester, Harrisonburg way. Those jobs, that would otherwise typically be serviced by
And they're
local guys.
high-paying jobs.
And they're high paying. I'll put it to you this way. I utilize some contractors in my line of work who will drive up from the North Carolina border, stay 3 nights, work the generic wage up here. We put them up. They get a good living wage and they go back.
Work those days.
They work those 3-4 days, they go back. And I look at it from Nelson County's visor when it comes to workforce availability. For every 3 jobs in Nelson County, 2 people, Nelson County jobs, 2 people drive from outside of Nelson County to work the job in Nelson County.
So I'm going to talk about that a little bit, about the land trust, and something that I was shared with Chris, and see if he can help me out here. But what this is called, when you take a look at the income from housing, is direct, indirect, and I just lost the third one. Help me out there, Neil. It's direct, indirect. There's a third word that's escaping me at the moment. But the Regional Housing Partnership is partnering with Walden Cooper because to take a look at what the real cost is to localities for housing, not just the direct, it's the indirect, induced, thank you. It's induced, direct, and indirect cost, and what the costs are. So we're gonna get some real actual data for each jurisdiction for the car footprint, the MSA, because it does not exclude Louisa. It excludes Louisa to go ahead and do that. But I'll let Neil chime in, and then I want to ask a question of Chris.
Well, the other thing to note is that to look the long term, and the idea we often talk. You guys have been through plenty of public hearings. What are the 3 things you hear about every time housing is proposed?
Water,
traffic, schools. Yeah, those are the 3
We don't have
things.
that one, Nelson.
You don't have that. in Nelson.
We have a shrinking school population.
They should be talking about sewer, but anyway.
Sewer, water and sewer.
Water and sewer.
Yeah.
But those are core infrastructure things, and those are core functions of government in my world. I also think that the idea behind growing your commercial base is a net positive, not only just for jobs, but it keeps people closer to home, and that has a positive environmental impact. If you are not driving from Lake Monticello to Charlottesville to get to your office, you're spending less fossil fuels. If you're biking, I guess that doesn't count, but
Since you rode here, right? You rode a bike from.
Let's not get Chris started
and
about
this-
bikes on 53. Let's not do that.
But
That's why I was late.
the key element to
He likes
this
me in spandex. but
is
anyway.
opportunity. And the idea of Keith in spandex, I just can't unsee that.
I'm a little not okay.
Not
You've got ADD.
That is not okay.
You guys are just jealous. That's all. Just jealous.
But I think that the part that the disconnect I see in localities from their ruling boards is this housing bad thing. I think housing is good. And oftentimes what I have heard from elected officials is housing is good provided they bring the treats, the proffers, the school sites, whatever it is. Or housing is good if they donate 20% of their project to the Housing Trust Fund. I mean, all of those types of ideas are out there, and it seems people lose track of the fact if you do that, you're making the rest of the housing more expensive.
So to make it a little bit more personal, so as you know, my mom and dad are moving in with us, and we're blessed to be able to do that. And sold their home, building a little, what are we calling it? A terrace level independent living apartment. I'm forbidden to call it a basement apartment.
Sounds like smart growth.
Well,
smart,
no, it's smart because if I call it a basement, my mother
Yeah.
beats me.
Yeah.
So
Unhoused
with the
people,
spoon,
not-
with the
yeah,
spoon.
homeless.
But in any event, we're blessed to go ahead and do this. Many people aren't. Like we
Right.
have clients that we're working in the Lake Monticello area that have reached these age in life that we're trying to sell their house, and we can't figure out where they're going to go because of all these numbers we talked about. But I'm going to rally it back a little bit. It started last cycle. It's still continuing this cycle. My personal home, I pay the same amount of dollars if I was in Albemarle County. And that's never happened before, up until the last cycle. So I am, now it's a little bit, a little bit different. It's the acres at Lake Monticello and so forth and so on. But if you were to pick my house up and drop it in Glenmore, the exact amount of money that I am paying in Fluvanna County will be in Glenmore. And I think it's directly related, and I'm excited to hear about, we've got some stuff coming in, is that it's this 70-30 ratio that so much of the tax base is on the rooftop. So, it's important for us to try to get that moving forward. But I'm paying the same amount of cash as if I was in Glenmore.
So again, we agree we need more business development. But again, business development brings more people. When the Walmart when the Walmart distribution center came into Zions, at one point they were new, and I don't know if it was a year or what, and the guy managing the facility gave a talk to, I don't remember what it was in the county, maybe chamber or something, and they were running ads in Stanton and Richmond to get employees. They could not fill the positions they had. So yes, God bless the people that are local, that got to have a job and stay local. And of course, nothing is the best answer for all things. Everything we do has a yin and a yang to it. I, a few years ago, sat in Harrisonburg, a speech by their economic development director for the city of Harrisonburg. No, it's for Rockingham County. And talking about all the development they're having coming in, the business development, which is great. They're getting gobs and gobs of it. A mass of their employees are coming from Northern Virginia. There comes a point when those people who are driving down from Northern Virginia go, honey, it kind of sucks. And, what do you think about Mennonites? Living near a bunch of nice Mennonites and trees, and they end up moving there. And so, yes, they're having all that, but I'm not sure it's ultimately helping their economy to have all of that business growth. I am pro-business growth. I'm just saying there's two sides to it.
Yeah, well, the businesses, I deal enough with commercial real estate to know, and the businesses are not coming to Zions Crossroads or even Louisa side of it anymore because of the fact that question. They're actually looking at this, where is my people coming from? I don't think they did enough homework when Walmart came in, but I had an interesting conversation with the planning director for Augusta County, I think it was last week, on it. You know what the biggest concern in Augusta County is right now? It's not water, it's not sewer, from development. It's taking care of old people.
Right.
It's because it's like I can't remember, it's the second or the third destination for retirees coming out of the Northeast, yada, 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 and that kind of thing. And he's like, look, we got infrastructure, we got roads, what I need is more emergency services, I need more hospital beds, I need more medical stuff, which I was like, because that's the first time I've ever heard
For Augusta.
that, oh, by the way, we got another one, which is healthcare.
Yeah, in Nelson County, we have a similar story with that. We have an aging population. Having the Wintergreen Resort area, obviously, it's not really where you start your family and
Right.
raise your
Yeah.
kids, most likely. But as we've seen the needs, it's like, wow, we're getting different kinds of needs. And, a fall risk, my grandfather's fallen, unfortunately, a few times. He's getting an ambulance every time he
Yeah.
falls. And compound that,
Well, and I think that's where elected officials know their constituents.
Yes.
From the Food Lion chats. That's really, people don't recognize how lucky we are to have that kind of representation.
Amen.
But that being said, it's a double-edged sword. Because I was reading, because this is what I do in my free time, the Albemarle County's implementation plan for their comprehensive plan, because you got to have a plan for the plan, and it spoke of...
But then another plan.
Right.
For that plan.
It spoke of in order to sustain the level of services our residents demand, taxes will increase. Now, it wasn't that explicit, but it was pretty doggone close, that the revenue will not equal it. Whether that's going to be in emergency services, or if it's going to be in aging services. People come here from other places and have this vision. I always think of the folks that moved to Arizona and then plant the very plants that gave their allergies. I was like, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. But you do have these folks that come from places like New York, and they have their own ideas. Even if it's 30 years they're here, they still have these New York ideas.
Yes.
And it's over 30 years, by the way.
Over 30 years.
Whoa, they still have the same ideas?
Same ideas.
Trust me.
But it is something that elected officials have to grapple with.
Sure.
And understanding those community needs and understanding why you have huge costs. Albemarle saw a big increase in their first responder costs this year because a safer grant 20 salaries they had to pick up.
Yeah.
And localities are using those grants to get where they need to get to, and instituting paid fire and EMS.
Same.
There was a time you wouldn't even think of that
I
in
remember
Fluvanna
that.
and Nelson.
That's right.
We just did it in Fluvanna a couple years ago on the rescue side. We're heading towards it on the fire side.
And it's a huge cost.
Yeah.
It's millions.
It's a new employee and liability center, but it is what is demanded by the residency.
Not only that, but you don't, be it baseball coach or firefighter,
any of
you
those
don't have the volunteerism that
You don't have
you
the-
had in the old days in a community-minded.
Any
Right.
of those civil organizations like
Yeah.
Burton, Rotary, I
Right.
mean, you're just struggling for volunteers.
Yeah.
Churches.
Yeah.
It is true, and it is, but I think that the way that it impacts locality spending is really interesting. And that lack of volunteerism, and there are really strong demands on first responders now in terms of level of training
Oh, yeah.
to be qualified to go to a ski incident at Wintergreen. You need to be very well trained
And
to
I
do that.
remember in 1987, got out of the Corps in 86, 87. Yonna and I went on the rescue squad. Yonna was life support. I was general EMT. But, you know, I did most of the driving because I had a lot of EVOC training when I was in the Corps, right? They just gave me a set of keys. They said, go, you can drive. You're not going to.
It's changed.
It's changed dramatically.
Right? And it just gave me a set of keys.
And
So-
the cost of those ambulances is Keith.
It's crazy.
Chris and I
A
have to
fire
pay for
truck's
it.
now
Oh,
$1 million
God.
just a typical.
And a
that's
year
that's a
away.
used one, honey.
And a year away.
Yeah.
That's without
Oh,
it getting outfitted.
Without it getting outfitted. That's
So
right.
today, what I wanted to do was just have four guys have a conversation
Sure.
about stuff that were important about it, and get everybody to share their thinking and all that stuff. I didn't have this panacea, a Pollyannic idea that everybody was going to walk out and kumbaya and be on the same page.
Big words, Keith.
Yeah, I know that. I know it hurt me. My tongue is a little twisted a little bit. But what I wanted to express to everybody is, even though we're on different sides of the fence on stuff, we still have a conversation. We still enjoy each other's company, so forth and so on across the board. And if we can get back to that, that's just a win-win for everybody.
Well, one, it's democracy. Two, not everybody's background experiences and all are the same. And therefore, if you have everybody elected that thinks the same, you'll have people who aren't served.
So I know I'm going to ask both of you gentlemen this question. I know you well enough to do this. From the time that you've got into your seat, what's one thing that changed your mind, right? That you were fixated on one thing, sat in the seat, learned a little bit more about a situation, and changed the way you thought about it. Does that make sense? That question makes sense? When you, at your elected seat level, you walked in with this vision on a topic and then ended up changing your mind after you got a little bit more education on it.
You have one that comes?
Yeah, I'll hit this one. I've talked about this one multiple times with people who run for boards or have run for boards. It's like one of the three promises when I first ran for office in 2017 was revitalizing the towns of Livingston, Schuyler, broadband throughout Nelson, and access to career and technical education. And though my philosophy and belief in career technical education, because obviously my occupation, I'm surrounded by those guys, framers, welders, masons, roofers. What I really struggled with once I got into office was dealing with the culture of how do you convince society to actually do career and technical education. And it was one of those things where I kind of like, with housing, you build it and they will come. You have a cultural issue right now. And we beat the horse dead 1,000 times, explaining how 4-year educations was a bad decision and we spent trillions of dollars in doing that, and career and technical education is the answer. Well, a lot of the kids who aren't doing the 4 years aren't doing career and technical education either. And some of that's access. I'm not going to disagree with that. Some of that is an access issue. But a lot of it comes down to a motivation and a values thing too. You know, instead of coming out and becoming a roofer in 100-degree weather, you know, you're looking at Target and they're doing $30 an hour and a
AC.
Yeah, and AC, and you know, I'm not going to blame them. But that's one that I think we as a society are truly going to have to figure out in how do we get these demographics since the Great Recession, because we spent a great job in the last 10 years, both beating up 4-year education as well as those blue-collar type jobs in construction, and saying don't do it, you'll be poor.
So give me a short version of that. What's the one thing?
What's the one thing
Yeah.
that we're going to do? Or
No,
what?
no, that.
You're asking to summarize to your question?
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah, basically career and technical education, and you can't
You
just...
expected to get further along with that than you actually could.
Yes, I expected that in the first couple of years we'd be able to knock this out of the park, and then we'd be providing all these programs. And in reality, you're also working with not just that, but also the culture of it.
So did you find, Chris, I'm going to try it a different way. Did you find you were trying to accomplish something that you thought you could do as a business owner and get hit up with a bunch of red tape and staff pushing back? Have you experienced that at all?
In business?
No. At the county seat,
Oh, red tape.
right? Have you hit with a lot of red tape or staff saying you can't do this or you can't do that? Does that make sense? That question make sense?
Yeah, I don't think so. As long as it's legal, I think it's, you know, if there's any question of something's legal, I typically know that there is a question of if it would be legal or does the state allow you or so on. So that's, in my case, typically vetted with our county attorney before it ever comes up to something like that. And then from there, it's just knowing if you have the votes. As far as red tape goes, there's not a lot of red tape so far in most of what I've wanted to see accomplished. It's just...
So you've been able to get your vision across the table?
I think so.
Good.
Oh, wait,
Good for
I
you.
know so. Yeah.
Good for you.
And you wanted to say something?
Yeah, two quick things. Number one, to Jesse's point, the city of Charlottesville is, and the Chamber of Commerce are doing something called Next Gen Skilled Trades. That's the first Saturday in October, and you can go to nextgenskilledtrades.com. It's going to be a great show. It's a Saturday. They're trying to get to the high schoolers, but it's also open for those over high school. It's just one more. It's not going to solve the problem, but it's an interesting thing that's going on. The one thing I wanted to say, which Keith will appreciate, I've been doing this 23 years, and the one big philosophical change was the idea of a community land trust. Not the community part of it,
Sure.
but the land trust concept. I'm a property rights guy through and through, and it took me probably 10 years to get over the fact that I buy a house and I don't own the land.
Yeah.
I've gotten there. It is a model, not the only model. I don't want to give Robert Liberty a box of cigars, but it's part of the silver buckshot,
Yeah.
and it's one of the solutions along
Now
with,
I don't owe him $5.
it's one of the solutions along with changing what we define as affordable housing. Jesse and I have talked many times about manufactured housing being a part of the solution, and localities seem to be opposed to that. So I think there are still ways to go. But when we have open minds to think about these things and the next step of these things, like the judge not knowing the old ordinance wouldn't automatically fall into place, these are important steps that only happen when you have these kinds of conversations. So thank you for having these.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have 3 land trust homes coming at Colonial Circle. I'm not asking anything from the county for it. I've got funds to do it. They're going to be ranging between 240 and 260 for 3-bedroom townhomes,
awesome.
which is pretty effing awesome. My goal is to try to keep Fluvanna people in Fluvanna, so if you know anybody that's checked those boxes, let me know. It's not a 60% AMI, it's at 80% AMI, so that $60,000 is close to around 80,000 on it. We're a little over in time, but real quick, your favorite lunch spot?
Can I quickly give my answer to the question you asked us both? I'll make it quick. My struggle that I've learned is, and I learned this on CPMT, Community Policy Management Team, that approved social services funding back before 2010. I was on it a couple years. I was put on it because I was a conservative, got on there and realized when you're dealing with 4-year-olds that are getting abused, it's
A whole
hard
different animal.
to draw the same lines. Similar in being on the board, you find yourself voting for stuff that you ache over, mainly in budget season, but you see some of the inside that you were elected to show up and learn.
Right.
And so as a conservative, you go, gosh, I mean, when we already had an X amount of increase in assessments, it's going to increase people's taxes, but how do we not? So that's
I'm glad you
that
said
line has moved.
I am so glad you said that, because that brings out the empathy in your heart, which I know you have.
Yeah.
It's not all about yes and no. There's the rest of it.
And the other thing I was going to say is just Fluvanna has an 88.4% home ownership, which is off the charts, and we have a 3% unemployment.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is working pretty well.
The prices are going up, but we'll save that for a different argument.
Incomes are going up too.
Yeah, 100%. Your number 1 lunch spot in Fluvanna County. Put you on the spot.
Ooh, I can't do that.
Who's your favorite child, Keith?
No, I'm not.
Now I know who's an
Yeah,
elected
yeah.
official.
Yeah.
The politician just came out.
My kitchen.
Your kitchen.
Yeah, yeah.
Good lie,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I know you can't cook.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm living off of tomato sandwiches right now, so.
Okay, well, thank you for not stepping into that. I thought
Yeah,
I'd
yeah,
throw it
yeah.
out there to see if you could do it. So, guys, thank you very much for joining us today. Jerry's back next Friday, and it'll be Jerry and I, and I'm sure I'll get picked apart on a couple things. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Jesse.
No problem.
Thank you, Chris, as
Thank
always.
you for having us.
And a Nelson transplant to Fluvanna County is not a bad place to get lunch.
This is
Right.
true.
Grass
Hey,
or
Jerry,
grain.
Grass and
wrap
grain.
up. We're done.
My
Grass
favorite
and grain
place in
pizza.
Fluvanna is grass and grain in
Let's do the
Fluvanna.
wrap up. Let's do the wrap up. Thanks, guys. I
Thank you.
appreciate the time. And he's going to tell us when the mics are.